Some foods earn a healthy reputation so easily that we stop asking whether they are healthy for us. A carton of yogurt looks wholesome. An apple seems impossible to question. Tofu and beans are praised as plant proteins. Yet after 60, especially when kidney function has changed, the name of a food tells only half the story. The amount, the label, the preparation, your medicines, and your latest blood results can turn the same choice into either a useful part of a meal or something that needs a limit. Today we will look at 4 ordinary foods that can support a more kidney-conscious way of eating. None of them can repair damaged kidneys quickly, and none can replace treatment. In fact, early kidney disease often causes no obvious warning at all. A blood test that estimates filtration and a urine test for albumin are far more reliable than trying to diagnose yourself from fatigue, nighttime urination, ankle swelling, or foam in the toilet. Those changes still deserve medical attention, but they are not a home kidney test. An ankle may swell for several reasons. Sleep, medicines, prostate problems, circulation, and fluid habits can change nighttime urine. Foam can appear temporarily, while persistent protein in the urine requires an actual measurement. The safest message is not to ignore a change and not to assign it a diagnosis from a video. Ask for the 2 numbers that reveal what symptoms often cannot. But food still matters, because 2 of the strongest pressures on kidney health are high blood pressure and high blood sugar. Better meals can support the daily work of controlling both. We will begin with a refrigerated food that is often healthier in appearance than it is in the nutrition panel. Then we will move through a fruit, a soy food, and finally a pantry staple that many people with kidney concerns have been taught to fear completely. Stay with that last one, because the real answer is not simply eat it or avoid it. The answer depends on portion, preparation, and what your own laboratory results show. The first place to look is the yogurt shelf, where 2 containers that appear almost identical can behave very differently in a daily eating plan. Plain yogurt offers protein, calcium, vitamin B12, and live cultures in many products. For an older adult with a modest appetite, a small serving can be easier to manage than a large breakfast. It can also replace a pastry, sweet pudding, or another snack built mainly from refined flour and added sugar. That replacement is more important than any claim that yogurt detoxifies the kidneys. The kidneys do the filtering. Yogurt does not scrub waste from the blood. Its practical value comes from what it contributes to the meal and what it may help remove from the routine. If a plain serving takes the place of a heavily sweetened dessert, the overall pattern may contain less added sugar. If it replaces a salty convenience breakfast, sodium may fall as well. Those changes can support blood sugar and blood pressure management, which are central to long-term kidney protection. The difficulty is that the word yogurt covers a wide range of products. Some single cups contain a dessert-like amount of added sugar. Others come with candy pieces, syrup, sweetened granola, or fruit preparations that add more sugar than the picture on the package suggests. Low fat on the front does not answer the questions that matter. Turn the container around. Look at the serving size, added sugars, sodium, protein, potassium when listed, and the ingredient list. For many people, plain unsweetened yogurt is the simplest starting point. It can be flavored with cinnamon or a modest portion of fresh fruit. Greek yogurt is usually more concentrated and often provides more protein, which may be helpful when an older adult struggles to eat enough. More protein is not automatically better, however. The body uses protein to maintain muscle and repair tissue, but breaking protein down also creates waste the kidneys must remove. Some people with chronic kidney disease need a moderate amount, while someone receiving dialysis may have different needs. That is why a large bowl chosen for muscle health can conflict with a kidney plan designed around a specific protein target. Yogurt also contains phosphorus and potassium. Those minerals are not villains in a healthy body, but reduced kidney function can change how well they are kept in balance. The amount differs among regular, Greek, strained, and plant-based products. Ingredients containing the letters Phos can signal an added phosphorus compound, which deserves attention when phosphorus has been restricted. A renal dietitian can help compare products using the complete meal plan rather than judging one carton in isolation. The live cultures deserve careful language too. They may support digestive health, but it is a leap to say that eating yogurt removes toxins or measurably lightens the kidney's workload. Research on the gut and kidney disease is developing, and a grocery product should not be sold as a treatment. Choose yogurt because it is a food that can fit the meal, not because the label borrows the language of medicine. There is another reason not to turn a useful food into a rule for everyone. A person with lactose intolerance may feel bloated or uncomfortable after dairy yogurt. A plant-based version may solve that problem, yet some alternatives contain very little protein and considerable added sugar. Someone with diabetes may care most about the carbohydrate line. Someone whose potassium or phosphorus is high may need a product and portion chosen specifically for those results. The correct yogurt is therefore not the one with the loudest health claim. It is the one whose numbers fit the person eating it. Try a small, deliberate serving rather than a bowl that grows larger each morning. Pair it with apple pieces or a few berries if those fruits fit your plan. Skip the sweet sauce and let the fruit supply the flavor. This is a quiet change, but kidney-friendly eating is usually built from quiet changes. The value is not hidden in a probiotic promise. It is in replacing a less suitable snack while still meeting energy and protein needs. Breakfast offers a clear example. One bowl might contain sweetened yogurt, syrupy fruit, granola with added sugar, and a second drizzle of honey. Each ingredient carries a healthy image, yet together they can become a concentrated sweet meal. Another bowl might use a measured amount of plain yogurt, chopped apple, cinnamon, and just enough unsweetened cereal for texture. The second version is not perfect for everyone, but its ingredients and portion are easier to evaluate. That is the habit this first food is meant to teach. Build the meal from the nutrition facts inward, rather than trusting the photograph on the front. Yogurt shows why a healthy label can mislead, yet it also introduces a second problem. Even a food with a simple ingredient list can arrive in a form that changes how quickly the body handles it. The next choice may sit in a fruit bowl, a lunch bag, or a refrigerator drawer. What makes it useful is not an exotic antioxidant. It is the difference between eating the fruit and drinking it. Apples are ordinary enough to be ignored, and that is part of their strength. They are widely available, keep well, travel easily, and require almost no preparation. They are also relatively low in sodium, phosphorus, and potassium compared with many foods, which makes them easier to fit into a variety of kidney-conscious meal plans. That does not make apples medicine. It makes them a practical fruit with fewer complications for many people. An apple brings fiber, including pectin, along with water and naturally occurring carbohydrate. Fiber supports regular digestion and helps a meal or snack feel more satisfying. When a whole apple replaces cookies, candy, or a sweetened drink, the person gains fiber and usually removes added sugar, sodium, or both. The benefit comes from the swap and the pattern it creates, not from the apple reaching the kidneys and repairing tissue. This distinction matters because diabetes and high blood pressure are major drivers of chronic kidney disease. High blood sugar can injure the small vessels and filtering structures inside the kidneys. High pressure can damage those vessels as well. A single apple cannot control either condition, but a repeatable snack with fiber may fit a plan aimed at steadier blood glucose, healthier weight, and less reliance on ultra-processed foods. Now, compare the whole fruit with apple juice. A glass can contain the juice of several apples and can be consumed in a few minutes. Much of the original fiber is missing, so it is easier to take in a larger carbohydrate load without the fullness that chewing a whole fruit provides. Juice is not poison, but it is not nutritionally interchangeable with the fruit it came from. For someone watching glucose or portion size, one small apple or a measured serving of slices often offers a clearer boundary. Preparation can either preserve that advantage or erase it. Fresh slices with cinnamon remain simple. Stewed apples can work when chewing is difficult, provided they are not covered in sugar. Applesauce needs a label check, because sweetened varieties can turn a modest fruit serving into dessert. Apple pie filling, caramel dip, and bottled apple drinks belong to a different conversation, even though the word apple appears on every package. Pairing also changes how useful the snack becomes. Fruit alone may not hold an older adult for very long, while an appropriate protein or fat can make it more satisfying. That partner might be a measured spoonful of unsalted nut butter, plain yogurt, or another option already approved for the person's kidney plan. Nut butters can be concentrated in potassium, phosphorus, and calories, so they are not an automatic recommendation. The point is to build a snack deliberately, instead of chasing hunger with several sweet products an hour later. The peel contains additional fiber and plant compounds, so keeping it can be useful when it is comfortable to chew and digest. Wash the fruit under running water. If dentures, swallowing difficulty, or a sensitive digestive system make the peel troublesome, removing it is reasonable. A food that cannot be eaten safely or comfortably is not a good choice, simply because one part contains more fiber. Portion still matters. People often hear that apples are lower in potassium and assume that unlimited amounts are harmless. 3 large apples do not equal 1 small serving. Total carbohydrate also accumulates. For many adults, half an apple or 1 small apple is an easy snack, but the right amount depends on appetite, glucose goals, and the rest of the day's food. Picture the decision at 3 in the afternoon. One option is a sweet drink and a package of cookies. The other is apple slices, perhaps with a spoonful of plain yogurt if that fits the plan. No dramatic cleansing begins. What changes is much more believable. The second snack is likely to contain more fiber, less added sugar, and less sodium. Repeat that kind of replacement often enough, and the eating pattern begins to support the conditions that protect kidney function. Apples also illustrate why repetition matters more than novelty. A rare serving of an expensive powder cannot repair a week of salty convenience meals. A familiar fruit that repeatedly replaces a less suitable snack has a better chance of changing the pattern. It is affordable enough for many households, portable enough for appointments, and available without a recipe. Those ordinary qualities are precisely what make it useful after 60, when energy, budget, dental, comfort, and appetite can determine whether nutrition advice survives outside the video. Yet fruit does not solve the next challenge. Older adults must protect muscle while avoiding the idea that every meal needs a very large portion of meat. Protein is necessary, but its source, amount, and preparation affect the rest of the plate. That tension leads to tofu, a food many people reject before learning what role it can actually play. Tofu is not useful because plant protein is automatically harmless to the kidneys. It is useful because it gives a cook another way to build a satisfying meal without relying every time on bacon, sausage, deli meat, or a large portion of red meat. Those foods can bring substantial sodium, saturated fat, and, in processed products, phosphorus additives. Replacing some of them can change several features of a meal at once. Made from soybeans, tofu supplies protein in a soft, adaptable form. It can be cubed into soup, crumbled into a breakfast mixture, baked, steamed, or lightly browned in a pan. Its mild flavor allows garlic, ginger, onion, pepper, lemon, vinegar, and herbs to do the work that a heavy, salty sauce often does. For an older adult who finds meat difficult to chew or a large dinner uncomfortable, tofu can make the protein portion easier to eat. The word replacement is central. Adding tofu to a plate that already contains the same amount of processed meat does not create the same benefit as using tofu instead of part of that meat. A kidney-conscious meal is shaped by the total load. If the tofu comes coated in a salty bottled sauce, deep-fried, and served beside processed meat, the plant label has accomplished very little. Start with plain tofu and check the nutrition panel. Pre-seasoned, smoked, marinated, or imitation meat products can contain much more sodium than expected. Soy sauce can raise the sodium quickly, even when the rest of the dish looks light. Reduced sodium sauce is still not sodium-free, so measure it rather than pouring until the food tastes familiar. Mineral content also varies. Tofu may be set with calcium salts, magnesium salts, or other coagulants, and brands do not all have the same amounts of calcium, potassium, phosphorus, or sodium. The texture changes the concentration as well. Firm tofu, silken tofu, and processed soy products should not be treated as one identical food. When laboratory values require limits, the label and portion are more useful than a general rule from a video. Protein deserves the same individual attention. Older adults can lose muscle when intake is too low, especially during illness or weight loss. At the same time, some people with chronic kidney disease who are not on dialysis may be advised to avoid excessive protein. Dialysis changes protein needs again. The goal is not to eat as little protein as possible and not to chase the highest number on the package. It is to reach the amount recommended for your condition while distributing it in meals you can comfortably finish. A practical first experiment might be one dinner each week. Reduce the usual meat portion and add plain tofu with suitable vegetables. Season with garlic, ginger, black pepper, herbs, or a measured amount of lower sodium sauce. Notice whether the meal is satisfying and whether the recipe is realistic enough to repeat. If it tastes like a punishment, the plan will not survive. Texture can be improved by pressing firm tofu before browning it, while silken tofu can disappear into a soup or sauce for someone who prefers something softer. The rest of that dinner should be chosen with the same care. A tofu stir-fry can become extremely salty when the cook combines soy sauce, bottled stir-fry sauce, seasoned broth, and a packaged seasoning blend. Each addition may seem small, but sodium is counted across the plate. Taste the food with acid, aromatics, and heat before assuming it needs another pour from the bottle. Lemon, rice vinegar, ginger, garlic, scallion, and pepper can create contrast without trying to imitate the salt level of a restaurant meal. For someone who has always built dinner around meat, the change can feel cultural or emotional rather than nutritional. Do not demand an overnight conversion. Mix a smaller amount of familiar protein with tofu at first, or use tofu in a dish where its texture makes sense. The goal is a durable replacement, not a performance of healthy eating. If a household can enjoy the meal twice a month, it has created more real change than a recipe everyone tries once and refuses to repeat. Tofu can also support the heart side of kidney care. The heart, blood vessels, and kidneys operate as a connected system. A pattern that replaces some foods high in saturated fat and sodium with appropriately prepared plant foods may support blood pressure and cardiovascular health. That is a more defensible reason to use tofu than claiming it directly cleans the kidneys. There are situations that require extra guidance. Someone with a soy allergy should avoid it. A person taking thyroid medicine may need advice about timing food and medication. Anyone following a prescribed potassium, phosphorus, sodium, calorie, or protein target should make the substitution with that target in mind. A renal dietitian can adjust the meal without forcing the person into an all-meat or no-meat identity. This is why tofu earns a place in the middle of the countdown. It expands the choices available at the protein position of the plate. It does not demand that someone become vegetarian. It simply makes it possible to prepare one less processed, less salty meal when the product and seasoning are chosen carefully. But tofu is only one form of plant protein. The final food is less expensive, more familiar in many kitchens, and often more confusing for people with kidney disease. It contains potassium and phosphorus, which is why older kidney handouts sometimes made it sound forbidden. It also contains fiber and plant protein, which is why newer conversations are more nuanced. The question is not whether beans are universally good or bad. It is whether the type and amount fit the person. Beans, lentils, and chickpeas bring together two things many American meals lack: fiber and satisfying plant protein. A modest serving can make soup more substantial, turn a salad into a meal, or allow a smaller portion of meat to feel adequate. They are shelf-stable, affordable, and familiar across many food traditions. Those practical qualities matter because the healthiest theoretical plan is useless when it is too expensive or too complicated to repeat. Fiber is the first reason to consider them. It supports bowel regularity, helps with fullness, and can soften the rise in blood glucose after a mixed meal. Soluble fiber can also support healthier cholesterol levels. These effects matter to the kidneys indirectly through metabolic and cardiovascular health. Again, beans do not enter the bloodstream and patch damaged filters. They can help build a pattern that addresses some of the pressures those filters face. Plant protein is the second reason. Replacing part of a meal built around sausage, bacon, salty canned meat, or a large meat portion can reduce dependence on foods that carry more sodium or saturated fat. Half a cup of cooked beans can contribute meaningful protein, but the exact amount varies. The rest of the day still matters, especially for an older adult at risk of losing muscle. Beans are also a carbohydrate food, and that sometimes surprises people who count only their protein. In diabetes meal planning, the portion has to be considered with rice, bread, tortillas, potatoes, or other starches on the same plate. Their fiber changes how the meal is handled, but it does not make the carbohydrate disappear. A small serving of beans beside a modest grain portion may fit better than piling both onto the plate without measuring either one. Now for the concern that makes this food the most important part of the list. Beans contain potassium and phosphorus. That fact is real, but the conclusion cannot be identical for every stage of kidney disease. Some people need firm limits because their blood potassium or phosphorus is high. Others may be able to include measured portions, and plant phosphorus is often absorbed differently from phosphorus added to processed foods. Dialysis type, medicines, laboratory values, bowel function, diabetes, total protein needs, and the foods eaten alongside the beans can all change the decision. This is where an internet list should stop pretending to be a prescription. If you have chronic kidney disease and do not know your potassium, phosphorus, or protein target, ask the clinician or renal dietitian managing your care. Do not remove every bean because of one mineral chart, and do not begin eating a large bowl every day because another video calls beans a superfood. Both extremes ignore the information that matters most. For someone who has been cleared to include them, preparation can improve the meal. Choose dried beans cooked without large amounts of salt, or look for canned beans labeled no salt added or low sodium. Drain canned beans and rinse them thoroughly to remove surface liquid and some sodium. Then measure a serving instead of treating the entire can as one portion. Compare that with a restaurant bowl or a ready-made chili. The beans may be nutritious, but the broth, cheese, cured meat, seasoning, and serving size can push the dish far from the original ingredient. This is why judging a meal by its healthiest component fails. Kidney-conscious eating examines the complete bowl, including what was added before it reached the table. The ingredients around the beans can determine whether the dish remains kidney-conscious. Beans simmered with bacon, sausage, salty stock, seasoning packets, and canned sauce may contain far more sodium than the plain beans themselves. Build flavor with onion, garlic, cumin, smoked paprika, pepper, vinegar, lemon, or fresh herbs. If a salt substitute is being considered, check first, because many salt substitutes contain potassium chloride and may not fit a potassium restriction or certain medicines. Digestive comfort is another practical barrier. A person who rarely eats legumes may feel bloated after a large serving. Start with a few spoonfuls and increase gradually if the meal plan allows it. Lentils may feel easier for some people, while others tolerate chickpeas or a familiar bean better. Rinsing canned beans and cooking dried beans until tender can improve texture. The goal is not to win a fiber contest. It is to create a portion the body can handle and the person will willingly eat again. Consider a familiar dinner of processed meat, white bread, and a salty side. The kidney-conscious version does not need to become an unfamiliar bowl of leaves. The cook could reduce the meat, add a measured portion of beans, include a suitable vegetable, and season the meal without relying on a salt-heavy packet. The plate still feels substantial. It simply shifts where the protein and fiber come from. Beans also reveal why the phrase kidney-friendly can be misleading when it is used without context. For a person trying to prevent kidney disease while managing blood pressure and glucose, legumes may be an excellent way to improve meal quality. For someone with advanced disease and high potassium, the portion may need careful adjustment. For a person on a form of dialysis that removes more potassium or increases protein needs, the advice can change again. One food cannot carry all of those situations on its label. Affordability gives beans an advantage that deserves more than a passing mention. A diet plan built around costly powders, specialty drinks, and unfamiliar products can collapse as soon as the grocery budget tightens. Dried lentils and beans, or carefully chosen canned versions, can stretch across several meals. They allow a family to improve fiber and reduce processed meat without creating a separate menu for one older person. Health advice becomes more humane when it respects the kitchen, the culture, the budget, and the people who share the table. That nuance is not a weakness in the message. It is the message. Protecting kidney health after 60 is not about memorizing a universal good list and a universal bad list. It is about building meals around your actual condition. Use laboratory results to set the boundaries, then choose satisfying foods inside them. The 4 foods in this countdown now fit together differently than they first appeared. Yogurt can be a convenient source of nutrition or a sweetened dessert in disguise, and its protein, potassium, and phosphorus must fit the plan. A whole apple offers fiber and a practical alternative to juice or packaged sweets. Tofu can replace part of a salty processed protein routine when its label and seasoning are chosen carefully. Beans can provide affordable fiber and plant protein, but the serving must respect individual mineral and protein needs. None of this repairs kidney damage in a few days. The strongest protection usually comes from less dramatic work: controlling blood pressure, managing diabetes, taking prescribed medicines correctly, avoiding unnecessary kidney-harming drugs, keeping medical appointments, and using blood and urine tests to follow kidney function. Food belongs inside that plan. It does not replace it. Sodium deserves special attention because it hides easily in bread, sauces, deli meat, canned soup, frozen meals, seasoning mixes, and restaurant food. A person can stop using the salt shaker and still consume far more sodium than expected. Reading labels across the entire day often reveals more than focusing on one supposedly protective food. The same principle applies to added sugar and phosphorus additives. Kidney care improves when attention moves from a single hero ingredient to the pattern surrounding it. If you have never been told you have kidney disease but live with diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, or a family history of kidney failure, ask how often your kidney function and urine albumin should be checked. Early disease can be silent. Waiting for swelling or exhaustion before testing can mean waiting too long. If you already have chronic kidney disease, bring one useful question to your next appointment. Which matters most for me right now? Sodium, potassium, phosphorus, protein, fluid, blood glucose, or total calories? The answer can make grocery decisions much clearer. It can explain why a food that works for a neighbor may not fit your plate, and why a food you were told to avoid years ago might be possible in a measured amount today. For now, choose one realistic adjustment rather than changing the entire kitchen. Compare two yogurt labels. Replace juice with a small whole apple. Try tofu in place of one processed meat meal. Or ask whether a measured serving of beans fits your latest results. One informed change is more useful than 4 foods eaten blindly. If this explanation helped you separate kidney support from kidney hype, share it with someone who is trying to make sense of a renal diet. And remember the most important reveal from the final food. The safest kidney meal is not defined by whether an ingredient sounds healthy. It is defined by whether the full meal, the portion, and the person's medical needs agree.